agenda is to discuss and act on the establishment of a committee focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Actually, I think the actual proposal from Councilor Breyer is to create a committee that would create a committee. Councilor Breyer, why don't you take us through that, please?
Yes. So this committee I initially wanted to establish, I think right around when I first joined the council, but was discouraged from taking it on right out of the gate. And I believe this to be a critical component of how we can move forward as a town with policies and programs to serve an increasingly diverse community, encourage people to feel included and to provide equity and access and services to all who reside in Barrington. But in order to get this committee right in terms of how it would be composed and how it would function and interact as a committee, I think taking some time with the group to really be deliberate in researching how a committee like this can work for our town, and then proposing that to the council in, I believe, April. And I think that would really set it up better than we could just do as a council now.
Vice President, maybe, did you want to be heard on this?
I sure do.
Okay.
I have to give you a warning that I have many questions and many comments regarding this proposal. So please bear with me. You won't have to bear with me much longer, but tonight you're going to have to bear with me. Out of the gate, I'll say that if we were to endorse this proposal, it would be the first time in my tenure that the town council would form a committee to form a committee. Convening a committee charged with working towards a specific goal, which will enhance and improve the lives of Barrington residents, is part of our job as a town council. So it is unclear to me why we would delegate our authority to a group of individuals who are not elected, led by one member of the town council who was. There is a reason why the town elects 5 of us to do this job. Furthermore, if we were to endorse this proposal, it would be the first time ever that we would appoint members to act in specific roles. Jacob, it is curious to me that in the very same meeting that you proposed a policy which appears to be an effort to expand appointments to boards and commissions to include more of the public, that for this particular organizing committee, you're proposing to narrow the field of applicants. And I hesitate to say this given our past private exchanges, to do that by micromanaging the makeup of this committee. This puzzles me from the outset. So here are my questions. Back in the 90s, I was appointed by the school committee along with several others and charged with expanding the high school with a much needed addition, as well as convincing Barrington residents to pass a bond referendum to pay for it. We worked tirelessly over the course of many months, but figured out our name, our mission, elected the chair and vice chair, and began working towards our charge by our second meeting. With that experience in mind, can you please explain why you would need 5 months to do that? While on this bullet in your proposal, which I have somewhere here, at the same time, would you please explain what you mean by authority?
So the reason for 5 months is that the Open Meetings Act is fairly prescriptive and can be fairly limiting. And as you mentioned earlier in the meeting, can cause committees to move slowly, can cause government to move slowly. So I wanted to recognize that, also recognizing that during those 5 months, which is also still during a pandemic, that we will have Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, which occupy a lot of people's time. We also have a national election, and we're starting school back up now. It's going to take time for a group to come together and put in the important work of determining how to do this correctly, rather than appointing a committee and telling them to figure it out as they get started. As far as authority, it would be a proposal for when recommendations would be made to the council versus to other boards or commissions. I don't have a specific preconception as to what exactly it would be, but the idea is that it would be an area in which this group would determine what it would propose a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee could do for the town.
Okay. Judging by the second bullet, please explain why you would even need a standing committee when your description of the overall purpose of the organizing committee would appear to have a similar purpose to that of the future standing committees.
Can you rephrase that?
Why are you looking for, okay, I can actually continue by reading your second bullet, which is the overall purpose of the organizing committee shall include, but does not need to be limited to, the evaluation of existing or new policies, ordinances, programs, and events. And you actually confirm that overall purpose of the organizing committee in your final bullet, and I'm just wondering why you would bother to put together a standing committee when you can do it through this organizing committee.
Sorry, so that's a typo. That second bullet should be the overall purpose shall include. That's not the overall purpose of the organizing committee. The organizing committee is being charged with creating something where that bullet would be the overall purpose or an overall purpose of the committee that the organizing committee is creating.
But in in that bullet, what I didn't read was your overall purpose for alignment with the mission and vision of the DEI-focused committee, which I read as part of the responsibilities of the organizing committee. So that is incorrect?
So at the beginning of the bullet, of the second bullet, say the overall purpose of the DEI-focused committee shall include, but does not need to be limited to, the evaluation of existing or new policies, ordinances, programs, and events for alignment with the mission and vision of the committee.
But DEIOC is what you're proposing, the proposal for a town of Barrington, D, diversity, equity, E, and inclusion, I, organizing, O, committee, C. So
yes, and that's why I'm saying it was a typo, and that's not what should be at the beginning of that bullet.
So in other words, I think what it should say is the overall purpose of this DEI-focused committee is
Correct.
certain things for alignment with the mission and vision of the DEI-focused committee.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But then we go back to the first bullet, in which you come up with a name, the mission, membership structure, authority, which I'm still a little uncertain about, responsibilities, and overall purpose. But you've already determined the overall purpose.
No, only part of it. The overall purpose shall include, but does not need to be limited to. So it gives direction. It says this is expected to be the meat of what the committee would focus on, but in their diligence, they might find other things that would be important to work on.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to show you, when you talk about evaluating past and what do you say? Existing and new policies, ordinances, whatever. This is, I don't want to make a mistake like Trump did. Code of the Town of Barrington, Rhode Island. This is where all our ordinances, existing ordinances, are recorded. And those contain all of the town's existing local ordinances. These are written in addition to state statutes, such as the Affordable Housing Act, and built upon such plans as the Affordable Housing Plan, which is part of the Comprehensive Town Plan, all of which is fundamental to understanding our local ordinances. Here's the Town of Barrington's Comprehensive Plan, which contains our affordable housing plan as well. So it would seem to me that before evaluating local laws, one must first familiarize oneself with their foundation. I would suggest to go through state law to try to understand all of state law, to be familiar with state law, local law, and our comprehensive plan would be an enormous and frankly impossible undertaking. Please define what you mean by programs and what you mean by events. And can you please provide examples of each?
Sure. A program would be summer camp. An event would be the pumpkin harvest.
Okay. As to the makeup of the organizing committee, how many total community members are you proposing? Is it 4?
Yes, it would be 4. And so 4 would be people who are not currently serving or not necessarily currently serving on a board or commission.
Okay. So that's 5 members thus far, including you as the self-appointed chair. Is that right?
Co-chair and self-proposed.
And what? Self-proposed?
Self-proposed. I haven't appointed anything.
Okay. You have 3 board representatives. Why these particular boards?
I see these boards as the most interactive with the community. I'm open to editing it. This is a draft.
Okay. For staff support, are you suggesting, this may also be a typo, I'm not really sure, or missing a comma, but are you suggesting that the solicitor is somehow or in some way connected in an advisory role to a diversity consultant?
No.
Okay.
It would be a different person. It's missing an Oxford comma.
Okay. And can you please define what you mean by diversity consultant? And if they would be paid, how would they be paid?
So they would be paid by approval from the town council. A diversity consultant would be somebody who is hired to provide professional advice on issues relating to diversity.
Okay. Do you have someone specific in mind?
No.
Okay.
And I also don't necessarily know that it would be needed. I know that the school district currently has a diversity coach that works specifically with schools. I considered reaching out, but figured that would be getting ahead of myself.
Okay. This is actually a comment, not a question. And this as to the fifth bullet, which are the application asks. The qualifications for the members of the organizing committee alone are considerably more detailed than what we ask of those applying to volunteer for existing standing committees. For that reason, this application process appears to be counter to the desired effort to move towards greater inclusivity when it narrows the field to exclude volunteers who might have an interest but have not yet established a public profile of activism. That's just my opinion. I have two more questions, and then I have more comments. How do you anticipate this organizing committee, or the standing committee, I guess? No, I think the organizing committee, responding to the listening project?
I don't know. I don't have any preconception to it because I don't know who would be on this committee and what they would be asked about the listening project.
Okay, and what is your conflict of interest with the listening project such that you have asked to recuse from further discussions of it?
What does that have to do with this committee?
It is a project. It is an existing program, and I'm just interested to hear. I think I have a.
That is a. We're not, the listening project is not on the agenda tonight, so.
So I can't ask why he's got a conflict of interest?
It's really not on the agenda, so, I mean, we could vote to move it on the agenda for discussion purposes only, but.
Okay, I'll ask it maybe at the next meeting. As you can guess by now, I'm not a supporter of this proposed policy, but I wish to approach this from a slightly different angle. And I warn you that I'm going to get a little political here, so I apologize. But it is, after all, what Peter DeAngelis, the former town manager, used to call election period the silly season. Only these days, it isn't so much silly as downright ugly. June Speakman is my good friend and was my former colleague on the council for 12 years. As a professor of political science at Roger Williams University, she has taught me many things about politics over the course of our friendship, one of which is this: that Republicans tend to line up and support an ideology, whether or not they like the candidate or even other parts of the candidate's platform. They will obey the party line and unify. Democrats, on the other hand, especially when it comes to character as well as policy, are like herding cats. Democrats tend to be all over the map on issues, and as she so aptly warned me, have a nasty tendency to, quote, eat their own, end quote. I'm sure we all remember how each of the dozen Democratic candidates for president were at one time or another shredded in public, even though we will unify behind the one left standing because the alternative is too horrific to imagine. Now, recently, since George Floyd's murder and our own ugly local incident, several groups have risen, some more, some less, to public prominence in response to the issue of racial injustice. These groups include the Town Council, faith groups, and the newly formed BCEI, among others. From the public's perspective, it would appear that we are all interested in addressing the town's long embedded prejudices and biases. The latter group, as far as we can understand, as their Facebook page is private, are comprised of 4 self-appointed leaders and about 50 members, including my colleague, Jacob Breyer. I am certain that everyone who joined this group has done so with the very best of intentions. However, behind the scenes, on social media, through private as well as public emails, certain members of this group have engaged in a campaign to impugn the character and actions of the town manager, the town council president, most recently myself, as well as the town council as a whole, which I find particularly curious when their membership includes a member of this body who has had every opportunity to correct the misinformation which fueled the misguided and uninformed character assassinations. Separate and apart from my original apprehension of delegating our authority to another body, as in form a committee to form a committee, I have deep concerns that this proposal has too many potential intersections with the very members of the aforementioned group who have continued to malign us, and I view this proposal as a move to legitimize their behavior. So until everyone involved in this issue gets their act together and proves to the community that we are all genuinely interested in improving the culture of our town, and our actions prove that we genuinely believe in the meaning of the words equity and inclusivity, I am unwilling at this time to establish a group which would have the power to stand in judgment of all the town's committed volunteer groups, as well as the employees governing this town. As I said before, we have a troubled statewide reputation, which we all hope will improve in time. But Barrington's highest standards of municipal government and management are unparalleled in the state. It is one reason, conscious or subconscious, why each of us has chosen to live here. I'm proud of being a part of that legacy for 16 years and will not support something that might jeopardize our exceptional municipal reputation. So while at face value, public perception of this proposal may seem well-intentioned, I sadly do not believe this is the case. That's all I had to say. Thank you for your time.
Any other members of the council want to be heard on this proposal?
I did.
Councilor Boyajian.
I think for a number of reasons, the town needs to form a diversity committee. One, we're obviously a community that's struggling with the issue, like many other communities are at the same time. We are, I think, if I had to guess, the town's largest employer. And by any standard, a company of our size should take this very seriously and have a committee supervising it. I think the way we need to go about it, because, I think it was from Jacob, actually, a draft statement of that we considered at our June meeting when we decided not to issue a statement. But there was a really powerful piece of it that stuck with me, is that the measure of success will be when the town is known for diversity and inclusion. Right? That's like part of our DNA here. And I think the way we need to go about forming the committee, to Kate's point, is not to appoint a committee to do it. We need buy-in from every institution and every person in the community. And I think the way to get that is to bring them all together, to make them commit to buy into a goal, right? Everyone, it's a hard issue to grapple with. It's a hard issue to discuss. But like a friend of mine said when I asked her about it, she said, you need to let everyone speak from where they stand right now. And say that that's okay that they stand there, as long as they're all willing to say, we share this goal. And I think for the most part, I'm not going to deny there are people who don't share that goal. But for the most part, right-thinking people who are good people are going to say, I share that goal, right? Barrington should be that place. And so, the idea of a diversity consultant it rings a bell for me. I said, you know what we should do is we should convene a meeting of the institutions where people actually develop their beliefs, right? Government's good at changing a lot of things, but we're never good at changing minds. We will completely overestimate ourselves if we say that government is going to get people to buy into this idea. But there are other institutions where people do. People in the faith community, houses of worship, people in their social clubs, people in the youth sports leagues. I mean, these are where, not 100 people from the community, but all 16,000 people in the community really, this is where their belief is formed, in the senior center, in the library. And if we were to convene all these people for a meeting and say, do you agree that this is Barrington's goal, right? Can we all subscribe to that? And develop the goal with them in the room so that we can all say we really share in it. We really, truly share in it. And in everything our organization does, we're going to strive for it. And we say, okay, now there's too many people in the room to get much done. We know that, 500 people in a room are not going to get much accomplished in terms of nitty gritty. But if they can coalesce around a goal and say, this is something where we're in everything we do, including the town government, but including the schools who actually already have experience in this because they have a diversity committee. And from the anecdotes we've heard, a lot of this is occurring in the schools. That's like another place we need to grapple with it. Do we need to have someone from appropriations to say, look, the importance of this issue needs to be reflected in our budget. There needs to be an allocation of dollars to actually deal with this. So bring all these people together and come out of that meeting with the idea of what a committee looks like, whether it's actually a government-appointed committee at all, and what their charge would be. But it has to be something that, it's got to be more buy-in than the 5 of us or 8 members of another or 9 members of an organizing committee. It's got to be 16,000 people who are saying, we're going to do this together. So I think it's a great idea that we form a committee, but I would say that the impetus for it, we should probably, like Kate said, act as a convener, right? Like that's one thing we can do as a town government. We can say, we expect you to be there. And if you're not there, don't come to us looking for support anymore. I mean, we could tell the youth leagues, we're going to make a decision on the turf field that night. They'll all be there. We could offer up, bingo, donuts. I don't know what have you. But to get everyone there and say the town expects you to be there and expects you to send leadership who is going to chime in about, here are the resources we have. Here are the diversity issues we've confronted. Here's how we dealt with them. And here's how we think we can help. And here's what we think the town's vision needs to be in this regard. And if everyone does that, and then you have the houses of worship and the youth leagues and everyone's saying, we really buy into this, right? I mean, I'm looking at the count right now. We have 78 people here. We have 16,000 people in the town we need to deal with. I think it's got to be, cast a huge net, distill out of that conversation, Barrington believes this. And if everyone had a hand in that, I think more people will believe it. But I think we should proceed with it, but I think we should proceed with it that way.
Councilor Hearn. You're muted. Councilor Hearn, you're muted.
Thank you. I hearken back to what Representative John Lewis said, good trouble. I think what Jacob Breyer is trying to do is good trouble. This town, I think, is ready for change and for kind of the conversations that he's entering into and wanting us to start, really tackling. So I think that this proposal is pretty well thought out. I don't think it's necessarily perfect. I think that it is an issue, like Steve's, to get a bigger buy-in. I think that that's important. I also think that it might be something that we, that starts with the next council. I think these are issues that are such a big issue that having it go to the next council in November might be better than having us deal with it at the end of certainly my term. I know that, Kate and Steve, I think it makes sense for this to be something that a new council kind of takes on as a mission. But I completely support the efforts and the thoughts, and to, get ugly about people is not what we are. And I would hope we're better than that. So I applaud Councilor Breyer on this and would just suggest that it's a November issue, but I love the action part of it. And so that's kind of where I'm from.
So I appreciate what Councilor Boyajian said about getting buy-in from a large group. That's critical. This group is going to have at its core, how do we make everybody in town feel like they are part of Barrington, like they're welcome in Barrington and included and able to make Barrington as great as it can be. And to Councilor Hearn's point, with it being a next council thing, the next council doesn't meet in earnest until January. And that's too far down the road to kick this can. It's a can that's been kicked down the road in our country for centuries. And it's time to start moving. And so while as a practitioner of agile methodologies, I don't like the idea of forming a committee to form a committee, but it bridges the gap. It bridges the gap between what we can and should do now to what needs to start happening sooner without predefining something that we don't know exactly how it should work yet. And I'm not smart enough to know exactly how to form this committee. Maybe I could have done it on my own if I was a different person on this council, but I'm not. And I believe that finding more people to come to the table and to have the discussions, to open it up to other community groups to participate in defining what it should be, is a way to move forward. And I'll just add, I'm trying to embody advice from Michelle Obama of when they go low, we go high. So I'm really trying hard not to take what was said personally. This proposal was written by me. Nobody else was involved. It was then shared with the council when I submitted it to be on the agenda. There's nobody with whom I've discussed other roles on this. There's nobody I have in mind. And this isn't being done to undermine anything anybody else has done or is trying to do. And the insinuation of that is offensive.
Okay, thank you.
And there are many members of BCI in this meeting who can say that they haven't seen this before and that they had no part in it.
Okay. My own view is that I would suggest an alternative committee, and that's the town council. I think when you talk about kicking it down the road, I think for way too long our country has done that. But I think as a town, we've begun this journey. And we can't forget that we all signed that pledge. We can't forget that we've set up this meeting that's coming in just a couple of days, just a few days, with our chief of police, that we've been working with our director of HR to make positive changes. We are on that path, and I think as a town council, we can continue on that path. We can take input from all different groups, BCEI, from the Faith and Justice, the social justice team at the Congregational Church, and from any other group. We can take that input and we can make changes. There are some changes that we can make and others that require community buy-in that we can't legislate. as Councilor Boyage had pointed out. As he also pointed out, the areas where we can do this are hiring, housing, and policing. And we're committed to doing that. Everyone on the council is committed to doing that, and we've begun on that path. I think that this kind of work is something that should come straight. It's important enough that we should be the committee that deals with it. That's my opinion. But unless there's anyone else, I will open it up for anyone who wants to make further comment on the council or anyone from the public. First is Mariana Silva-Buck. Ms. Silva-Buck, please.
Hi again, everyone. I'd like to say thank you, first of all, to Jacob to bring this proposal. As a minority in town, very excited to see this being put on the table to begin with. And I believe that maybe we just got off on the wrong foot here, with all due respect to Councilwoman Kate. But I am a little bit dumbfounded by some of her words, and I would like very much to understand where the concerns or the deep disappointment with helping us, minorities, people of color, anybody that is othered in town. Where do you find this resistance, or where is your issue resisting creating something that would be beneficial for the rest of us? And I can understand and agree with things have been done a certain way for many years. There is a certain orders and certain protocols to follow. However, there is no rules, from my understanding, or laws that would stop this committee to create a committee from existing. Perhaps maybe this being the first won't be a bad thing. Maybe this being the first could open the doors to not only Barrington, but to other towns to do the same. Because quite frankly, how can you create a committee or agree to create a committee if we get that far without hearing from us, the people who the community would serve, what we need that community to be? Because what I see in front of me, outside of Jacob for his religious reasons, might have been othered throughout his life, is people discussing this who do not represent me or any other people in town. So why would our voices not be important to maybe doing things a little bit differently? And why would that be such a resistance? And when we have 79 people in this meeting and only 2 of us are people of color raising our hands, that should be also a red flag. And Council, I appreciate your words and your support, but I have to disagree that we need to convene 16 people to create something like this. We don't. We need to listen to the people who this would benefit. So again, and if you don't do that, it will be another story of white people sitting behind your desks thinking about what is good for us without listening with an open mind and an open heart. And I think that is extremely important. So what if we're going to be doing things for the first time? Let's do things for the first time and let's do it right. Why do I have to sit here with a few of my others that probably won't speak up and think that, you know what, how much longer do we have to swim against the grain to try to have our voices heard? Or how much longer are we going to pretend that is not an issue in Barrington? How much longer is this going to be not taking serious or having this resistance because it has never done before? Can we at least try to do it?
Can I respond? With all due respect, we did hold a meeting for you, and I don't think I stopped anyone from talking everyone who wanted to be heard, as far as I know, was heard.
Yes.
We went until people were finished talking. So I wouldn't say that we are not listening. I think that we are listening. And so I hope that we can continue to work with different groups like BCEI and get the right kind of input that will help us move forward on this journey. I think that all of us want to move towards a more welcoming, a more diverse Barrington. And I think that there are going to be people who don't want to do that. And then there are going to be people who are in favor of that, and then we disagree on how we get there. But we'll work through that. I think we're committed to that as a council. I want to give somebody else a chance. Ms. Frage, Wafa Frage.
Am I muted? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I want to start by thanking Councilman Breyer for this initiative or suggestion to establish the committee. I am not an expert on the government, the procedures, and the other stuff, but the idea itself is pure, is genuine, and the short time I know Jacob as a councilman, I trust his genuity. So I am not sure where is that attack that is coming from Councilwoman Weymouth. As far as I remember, you started, Councilman Weymouth, saying that Barrington has a reputation in the state for prejudice, correct? Knowing that, yes, and knowing that you are a councilwoman, how do you oppose an idea as genuine as that from a co-worker or from a councilwoman or a councilman? I am just shocked. So I moved here to town in 2004, December 27, after an abusive relationship with my ex. And this reminds me of the same abuse that I have witnessed all my life. This reminds me of the war that I was stuck in for 9 months. When you oppress people, expect nothing good. Nothing good, Kate. I've known you for years.
That's right.
Okay, I appreciate all the work the town is doing. I came here and I tried hard not to speak, okay? Because I know I am a very genuine person, and I think Jacob is. Jacob is trying hard. BCEI is not a terrorist group. BCEI is a group of genuine people who have one agenda in their heads, is expanding social justice in town, making people like me, like Mariana, like the other, I can't remember the name of the third person, I'm sorry, feel welcome. We don't feel welcome in town. We do not. We love the town, okay? And no one is gonna tell us leave. No one is gonna call us thugs. No one, because we're not. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person with their hand up is Emma's phone. Can you identify yourself, Emma, please?
Hello?
Yes, is that Emma?
Yeah, it's actually Amy Hogarth. I'm trying to enter in as on my phone, but I don't know if the meeting person can let me in on my phone. I had Emma's phone when I was on the meeting before.
Okay. Well, I think you can go ahead with that.
Okay. Hi, I missed some of what Kate was saying. And Kate, I'm sorry I'm calling you Kate because I can't remember your last name. But I gathered that one of the conversations was about BCEI and things that have happened. I'm not sure what any of that is about, but this is what I'm going to say, is that I was on the meeting and then I had to leave because I had 3 children in the first day of school, as many people probably on the call did, and my kids are still a little bit thrown by all of that, and I'm trying to figure that out. And we're having a town council meeting the same day. So I'm sorry about that, but I do think that the idea of having a committee for diversity is a great idea. And I would really want, as a person who is leading BCEI, to have time to talk about that with the 50 plus members we have who are all people who are members of this town and sort out, what we think about that so we could comment on it for town council. I did not know this was going to be talked about today. And so I would want to have a little bit more time to sort that out. And I think the members in our group would really love that, especially because it is the first day of school, which I'm sure when this was set up, you guys maybe didn't know because school was changed. But as a result, I don't know if other people are as tired as I am from trying to run around 3 kids to 3 different schools, but I'm exhausted.
I would say that Councillor Boyajian and Councillor Breyer are probably.
I feel like they're the same way. Yeah. So I'm wondering if we could. Yeah, I wonder if we could just take a beat and have some time for everybody to think this through. I know that the leadership of BCEI has planned to try to meet with Kate because we understand there's some, I think, misunderstandings around our views. But this is what I know BCEI is about. We're about anti-racism. We're about making sure that Black and Brown voices are heard. We're about making sure that people who feel oppressed have places to go and ways to sort that out. And we're really, really interested in helping this town be a town where everybody feels welcome and taken care of. And I think that there's people in the town council who also want all of those things too. So I don't think we have to argue about this. I think what we have to do is get clear about what the goals are and make a plan and actually do it. And for that plan to happen, I think maybe personalities need to be less and principles need to be first. And our plan of what we think is best for everybody. I want to also say to Wafa and to Mariana, I'm super sorry that you've had 1 minute of time where you felt unheard or unseen or unlooked after in this town. And I'm really interested in making sure that doesn't happen to anyone based on their race, based on their ethnic history, based on how they've come to live here, and or based on who they love or where they live or anything. So that's what I'm about, and that's what I believe. And I'm just really interested in moving forward and finding a way where we can all really work together. Thanks.
Thank you. Louise Sloan would like to be heard.
Hi, I'm just kind of bowled over and astonished and confused by the level of negativity I just heard from Council Member Weymouth. And I'm a member of BCEI, and I actually thought the listening project sounded really interesting and like it had a lot of merit. So I'm not really sure what is being talked about. But on the face of it, we're talking about a diversity and inclusion committee, sounds like, or the thoughtful pre-formation of such a committee. I think that's a great idea. The thing that I heard from other council members, 16,000 people, like all buying in, like I'm not sure how you. So my experience is in most of my adult life, I've lived in extremely multiracial communities, and I moved to Barrington 5 years ago. And I'm from a community very much like Barrington, Richmond, Virginia, the West End suburbs, which are pretty much Barrington. And I can tell you that when you grow up in a place like that and you're only like in a place like that, there's a lot you miss, which is why you need to form a committee to form a committee. And I think it's actually a really great idea. I think that I can see that that the heart of the town council members are all seem to be in the right place, but not sort of formally consulting people that kind of know a little bit more about diversity or inclusion or are people of color themselves seems like not such a great idea. And I just, the level of scoffing at this sort of committee, and I don't have anything to do with the proposal, nothing, absolutely nothing. But I just looked up on my iPhone, and there's towns all over the country that have diversity inclusion committees, like in Idaho, Massachusetts, Virginia, Oregon. So it just seems like an excellent idea. It seems like an excellent idea to form a committee around a sensitive issue like that, from the perspective of being in a town where this town like doesn't get it, and there's ways in which I'm sure I don't get it. But I can tell you, I walked down the street in Brooklyn in my extremely multiracial community, and there were a bunch of teenage boys walking towards me, and they were black, and it was after dark, and I was by myself, and I wasn't afraid of them at all. But I realized that 10 years earlier, I might have. 20 years earlier, I definitely would have crossed the street. So I can tell you that we're all growing, we're all learning, and I think that taking immediate action and consulting people that kind of are in this further than many people in Barrington are is a really great idea, and I support it. And I'm sorry there's so much enmity around this, because it seems like everyone really is going towards the same goals.
Thank you. Kelvin Mazursky would like to be heard.
Hello, council, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay, hi, and thank you for unmuting me. So when Mr. Cunha became the town manager, I don't recall, was that 3 or 4 years ago, the Bay Spring Community Center had him speak on community at one of their events, along with a couple other speakers. I think you recall, Mr. Carroll, that event.
Yes.
Because after the event, you had approached me because I believe you felt that I offended our new town manager with my comments about what does community look like. And my point that I was trying to convey, that I probably didn't convey well, was that we do lack diversity. And when I brought my wife and small child here to Barrington 15 years ago from Providence, and prior to that we were in Brooklyn, New York for like 3 years, my biggest concern, flat out, was the lack of diversity. And how am I, single-handedly, how am I going to incorporate diversity in an area where there is none? And I was scrambling to figure out, how can I do that? The monumental undertaking that Councilman Breyer is taking on here, I'm floored. I did not expect to hear that. I appreciate that he's giving it the gravity by looking at forming a committee to form a committee, because I think he's on the right track. Because the town council, no offense to you guys, I don't think you want to do that. I think that would be a huge mistake. I know your hearts are there, and I appreciate it. We're all part of this community. But if I have to go back to that conversation that you and I had, Mike, we are not the ones to be the ones to form that committee. And I would greatly appreciate the town council and our community embracing the efforts of Councilman Breyer in the direction that he's trying to take this. This is exciting. And I will leave it to let somebody else talk, because I love what I'm seeing taking place tonight. Unexpected, and I love it. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Kathleen Bruckner. Oh, you're muted. You have to unmute her.
No, we can't hear you.
Not yet. Can we?
How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
Please,
This is Trinky Bruckner. I have been a member of BCEI, and I'm curious about whether Kate has received emails from BCI, especially about the listening project that she presented on September 2nd. I know at BCI we're supposed to maintain confidentiality, but I want to say that I saw many emails amongst BCI members that were extremely nasty, and I got the impression that they were sent to Kate. I was shocked by them. So I don't think they were fair. I think that Kate has shown her commitment to diversity through all the work she did on the listening project. I think that Jacob has some good ideas. One of the suggestions I made to the council, Mike, when you reached out asking for suggestions from Mission and Justice and Interfaith Partners, was immediately set up a committee to look at inclusion and equity. I think Kate's questions to Jacob had more to do with the mechanics and not weren't necessarily a criticism of having a committee. She was, I think, doing her due diligence and making sure the committee was set up properly. So, Kate, can I ask, have you received emails attacking you?
Yes, I've received emails attacking me, as well as letters from members of BCEI, including leadership, who are absolutely opposed to the listening project. And I'm frankly stunned myself that Mariana especially has ignored the whole project that I presented at the special meeting that was held, in which BCEI members leadership introduced the organization to the town council. I believe the town manager and the town council president have each been attacked by emails and by letters that that I can't quite understand if they have been uninformed about how government works, or our positions on racial injustice. It concerns me that the one council member who is a member of that organization, of BCEI, did not make the effort to inform the members how government works, or that that the council has been working towards. We signed the pledge. We have taken our steps towards honoring that pledge, and I don't understand why the attacks and the maligning have continued. That's where my concern is.
So, if I can, well, thank you, Trinky and Kate. I think that we have taken steps. I will call on you, Jacob. We have taken steps. We are moving in that direction. And I think we remain open to other ideas that folks have. But I want to, I'd like us to move through this discussion because our next discussion is likely to be fairly lively as well. And we really should not be here until 12:30. That's a lot to ask of the staff and everyone. So I will call on Councilor Breyer because he wanted to be heard.
Yes, perhaps somebody else from BCEI can speak to what efforts I have or have not done. But it might be helpful for Vice President Weymouth to know I haven't attended a single meeting of BCEI yet. I haven't been able to because I've been busy with other meetings that have prevented me from doing so. And all of the letters that I believe it was Trinky mentioned, I have seen those after they've been sent. So it's not an issue where I have an opportunity to correct something. And it's also, depending on the nature, is not necessarily my place to correct other people's opinions. But I too have received a lot of negative feedback from people who want more from the council.
I see that we have two folks with their hands raised. I would, if you've already spoken, I will call on you, but if you could wait until the next discussion, I'd appreciate it. Jack Van Leer has not spoken yet, so Mr. Van Leer, if we could unmute him.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be very brief. I just want to weigh in as one of the leaders of BCEI. I'm in full support of what Jacob's recommending tonight. And I also just want to point out briefly and thank Trinky for speaking up. One of the things we believe at BCEI is you don't have a true collective unless there are differing opinions and that there are differing points of view and there are differing backgrounds that you can bring together. So we disagree a lot in BCEI. And I think that's healthy. And I think it's healthy that there is disagreement, but there also has to be dialogue, and there has to be dialogue in good faith. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, Mariana Silverbach has raised her hand. Would you like to be heard? You can unmute her.
I'd just like to respond very briefly to the comments of Councilwoman regarding me ignoring her entire project, and to say that as one of the leadership members of BCEI, I have not ignored your project. However, I come to a consensus with the leadership group to sign off on whatever the majority of the decision is, as leadership should be. And while your project was being discussed, I have lost my grandmother. And I also found out that my entire family in Brazil has coronavirus, with my uncle being in the ICU, being intubated this week. So no, I did not ignore your project. I did not have a chance to look at it, but I trusted my colleagues in the leadership that they had done the due diligence and looked over it and then sent it with my name signed at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had a motion. I can't remember if it was seconded. Mary, do you remember if this was the motion? Well, we actually haven't had the motion yet. So we just had discussion on this particular one. Jacob, did you want to make the motion to?
I move to resubmit this in October for discussion at our October meeting.
Okay, so you don't want to make this motion. You just like to put it on.
Yeah, I'm moving to resubmit. It'll still be a committee to form a committee because I don't think that the council alone has the skill set and background to do this. But I will take the feedback that I've heard tonight and submit a new proposal in October.
Okay, so you won't be making a motion to present this tonight. Instead, your motion is to continue the discussion, or
maybe it doesn't need a motion. I will.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I'll put it on the. Yeah, I'll put it on the agenda. I'll
submit something new next month.
Okay, all right. So the motion, there's been no motion made. So we don't need to address agenda item 15 in terms of a vote.